What's up, everybody? It's Jordan, and welcome to the Sports Behind Show. And this is going to be my part one of my 32-part series of doing a free agency mock simulation and also a 3-round mock draft for each NFL team. Throughout this NFL season, the Jacksonville Jaguars, they will have the first pick in the NFL draft. So I'm going to start with them in this series. So I want to do a free agency mock simulation first on fanspeak.com. So we'll go ahead and get started here. And something with this, simulation, when you look at players, on here that you can cut for Jacksonville and pretty much all the teams, this is the teams like players on the contract heading into the season. So I'm not going to cut anybody because, for example, Cam Robinson and Norwell, some of those guys are free agents. So I'm not going to cut them because that wouldn't even make sense because they're free agents. So you wouldn't really save money that way. This was their, cap situation heading into the 2021 season. And obviously, the Jaguars, they have a new head coach in Doug Peterson. The Urban Meyer project did not work out in Jacksonville at all. And I'm very interested to see Doug Peterson going to be the next head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars because, he won a championship with the Eagles. I think he can do good things with Jacksonville. I'm kind of intrigued by Peterson going to the Jaguars. And, when you see some of these guys, Jaguars could re-sign. First guy off the board, you see DJ Chark. In my opinion, I think he's one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL. But when you look at, his social media posts and likes and different things, he's kind of took some of the, Jaguars-related posts off of his, social media accounts. And I feel like there's multiple things and reports that saying it's unlikely Chark is going to continue playing for the Jaguars and re-sign. I personally do not think Chark will end up re-signing with the Jaguars, which is not good for the Jaguars because, honestly, I think Chark is a very, very good receiver. And since he's probably not going to re-sign, that's in my opinion, probably one of the most top priorities this season is to get Trevor Lawrence, your franchise quarterback, that wide receiver one so he can play with him for several more years, get a guy maybe in free agency, maybe, in the draft. And looking at here, they have quite a few starting offensive linemen who are free agents, like, A.J. Kane, Norwell, and Cam Robinson. Starting off with, A.J. Kane here, I think they should re-sign him for probably maybe about $6 million for a couple of seasons because I know he might not be the best, but at the same time, you do not want your investment in Trevor Lawrence getting hurt like Joe Burrow did. Unfortunately, I know firsthand seeing Burrow getting injured because, I'm a big Bengals fan. And, I feel like, you kind of have to sign some of these guys. Like, for example, I think they should re-sign Norwell. He's one of the better guards, not just in free agency, but honestly in the NFL. I would give him $13.5 million. I know some people might say it's maybe a little tad bit too much, but guard prices for people are only going to get higher as the years continue. It's one of those things also, if you're the Jaguars or a small market team in general, you might have to have this percentage of guaranteed money pretty high. So, and you might have to, overpay them a tad bit because you're one of those small market teams who haven't really been good in the past. So we're going to offer Norwell $13.5 million for 3 years. Let's see here. So we have Norwell and A.J. Kane. I believe they have both re-signed. And, looking at it here, there's not really anybody else that really stands out to me. I believe they had Treadwell, but he's not here. I might try to re-sign him. So we'll go ahead and get into the free agency part here. So when you look at this Jaguars team, they have a ton of cap space. They have over, with the Norwell signing and the A.J. Kane signing, they have just under $50 million. So which is really, really good. That's one of the most, cap spaces in the NFL. And when I look at this team, there are several holes that need to be, fixed for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I already mentioned wide receiver. Offensive lineman's one, but we kind of covered that a little bit already. But we still need a tackle because, we did not end up re-signing Cam Robinson. But we did sign 2 interior offensive linemen and both the guards in Kane and Norwell. Wide receiver, defensive tackle, defensive end, linebacker. I want to start off with wide receiver because there's a lot of wide receivers I'm very intrigued by. If you're a Jaguars fan, Jaguars is very interesting because you look at guys like Mike Williams, Chris Godwin, Michael Gallup, somebody to me who I think could possibly have one of the most best signings for very, very cheap. And by the end of his contract, he'll be one of the better receivers is Cedric Wilson from the Dallas Cowboys. I want to try Chris Godwin. because I know he's coming off a season-ending injury, so his price might be a little bit lower than some people thought. And he's, a phenomenal wide receiver just coming off his rookie year. I'm going to offer him, for example, when you look at Kenny Galladay, he got 16 this past year from the New York Giants. I'm going to offer Galladay 18 to see if he takes it. I personally think that's probably about where he, that kind of price range, the 18, 19 area. We'll have 75% guaranteed. That's one of those things that I'm saying. Sometimes you have to overpay and give them more guaranteed money for those guys to come to a small market team. So if you get Chris Godwin, I mean, you got your number one receiver. That's a replacement for DJ Chark and a significant upgrade. Despite Chark being really good, Chris Godwin's going to be one of the better receivers in the NFL for the next several seasons. Some other guys here, that could also kind of upgrade their secondary. When you look at Doug Peterson, coming from Philadelphia, I think that's something you need to keep an eye on, because I think there's going to be several players who played with the Eagles who were coached by Doug Peterson to, get signed by the Jacksonville Jaguars because they have that familiarity with Doug Peterson. For example, when you look at the secondary, safety Rodney McLeod, I think I might have pronounced that wrong. I think that would be a really nice upgrade. In addition to the secondary, I'd offer him $6 million for 2 seasons. I think that would be a really nice, help there in the secondary for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's played for under Doug Peterson with the Philadelphia Eagles, and some other people as well. I really like. When you look at this Jaguars team, they really need, mainly in offense, they just need a good wide receiver and a tackle, and on defense, they pretty much need everything. And they could really use a linebacker. One of the linebackers that kind of interests me a little bit is Anthony Barr. Anthony Barr, it's very likely he will not end up playing with the Vikings. He's more likely done, especially because they have a new head coach in Minnesota. Mike Zimmer is no longer the coach there. I would give Anthony Barr $13.5 million for 4 seasons, and let's say percentage guarantee we'll go 70. I think, if you get him, all of a sudden, you get Anthony Barr, you get Chris Godwin, you have a marquee signing on both offense and defense, and that's really big of your Jacksonville, because I think Jacksonville, I don't think they're going to be as bad as people think they are, especially being in the AFC South, one of the worst divisions in the NFL. As we continue here, I kind of mentioned the secondary. I know we already kind of targeted a safety here. I want to target a corner. And let's go after Kyle Fuller. I think Kyle Fuller is one of the more underrated cornerbacks in the NFL. Let's see here. He was, played with the Bears a little bit. He also played with the Broncos. I don't really see him. That's weird. Must have been, re-signed or something like that. So, look at some of these other guys here. The wide receiver part, I feel like a wide receiver, he's not going to, be great, but I feel like it's an addition, and it could help you out in the long run, and they give you more depth at wide receiver, and that is Greg Ward. Greg Ward, spent time with the Philadelphia Eagles, and he was coached by Doug Peterson. When he was with the Eagles, he had a couple of good seasons there. He's not a guy who's going to wow you with his stats, but he's just basically an extra body who I think can, provide solid depth for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And as we look for Greg Ward here, I honestly don't see him either. It's kind of strange, both those guys, getting signed by their teams. So we also have, as we continue here, looking at defense. Like I mentioned, defense is a major need for the Jacksonville Jaguars team. And somebody right here, Derek Barnett. Derek Barnett has averaged about 4 or 5 sacks his first several seasons, and I think he'd be a nice addition to this Jaguars defensive line. And defensive end and defensive tackle, I think, are kind of some big needs for Jacksonville. Jacksonville has probably had one of the worst defensive tackle groups in the NFL for the last several seasons. So I'm going to offer Derek Barnett $5 million for 2 seasons, and we will offer him percentage guarantee. We'll go 70. Let's see if he'll take that. So some of these guys, they're kind of big signings, like a Chris Godwin and an Anthony Barr. But some of these other guys, like Derek Barnett, he's not going to be great. It's just getting familiarity with his former head coach, and I think it could really help them to get some better players. Because if you're a young team, you want to get young players who can help you in the future, but you also want to get some of those guys who can, who's been around the league for several years, who can really, kind of mentor some of these younger guys. And I feel like a guy like, Derek Barnett is, capable of, kind of help mentoring some of these younger guys in the NFL today. So let's continue here, with this team. So far, we've kind of targeted, wide receiver, defensive end, linebacker. Let's say we're done submitting for these offers and see what guys we will end up signing first before we continue with some other people. So we were able to get Chris Godwin. We were able to get Derek Barnett. We were able to get Anthony Barr. And we were able to get Rodney McLeod. We got all 4 of those people. I think that's very good for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So let's see how much cap space we have left. We have $17 million left. So looking at my kind of list here, I'm very surprised Kyle Fuller and Greg Ward were gone. Those were 2 people I honestly thought were going to be available, and I was very intrigued by for Jacksonville to possibly go after. Let's see here, wide receivers and anybody else to kind of interest me a little bit. See here, Auden Tate. Being a Bengals fan, I think Auden Tate has potential to be pretty good. Cedric Wilson, I might target him. I think he's very underrated. I'm actually going to try Cedric Wilson here. Cedric Wilson reminds me so much of Tyler Boyd. Several years ago, Tyler Boyd had 1 good year, and then the Bengals signed him for, I believe, like 4 years, like $11 million a year. And at the time, I thought that was a little bit of an overpay just because he had 1 good season. But Tyler Boyd has a couple years left on his contract, and in my opinion, by the time his contract ends, he will have the best contract for a wide receiver, not on a rookie contract. So the Bengals really, had a great contract there by signing Boyd early before he got basically mainstream and big. And I feel like whoever signed Cedric Wilson would have the similar, situation. If you sign Cedric Wilson for $6 or $7 million for 4 years, by the time his contract ends, I almost guarantee you that number is going to double because he can return a little bit, he can catch, and he has shown some promise. But, being behind guys like Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup, he's not really had, tons of chances to really shine. So we're going to try Cedric Wilson here for $6.5 million. I think, this is a steal if you get him for this. I know some people think, that might be a little bit of an overpay for a guy who hasn't really played much. I really think whoever signs Cedric Wilson for $6 or $7 million, that is a phenomenal signing. And I think, honestly, I think that would be one of the best signings in free agency. Whoever signs him for around that number, that would be great for them. So let's look here at defensive tackle. Let's see if anybody kind of interests me a little bit. Obviously there's Malik Jackson, the former, Jaguar. I want to try B.J. Hill. B.J. Hill has played for the Bengals this season. He was traded from the New York Giants in August for Billy Price. B.J. Hill has been phenomenal for the Bengals this season. So I'm going to try him for $4.5 million. And we will try for, let's just say 2 years. Percentage guarantee will go 80. If you get him, I think that's a nice addition. I really think B.J. Hill is one of the more underrated defensive tackles in the NFL. He's provided, great depth and has showed big when he needs to, playing with the Cincinnati Bengals this season. Let's looking at corners here. Somebody who's okay but not great, I think would be kind of cheap, would be Darryl Roberts. You're just kind of getting some extra bodies guys who played in the NFL for a little bit. We'll try Roberts like $2 million, I guess. Just, getting some extra bodies, getting some guys who've been around the league, guys who can kind of mentor some players who've been around the league for quite some time. Because when you're a team like Jacksonville, you're not going to have many players who've been in the league a long time. So I think it's very important to get some of those, older guys to mentor. So we were not able to get B.J. Hill. We were not able to get Darryl Roberts, but we were able to get Cedric Wilson Jr., the wide receiver, formerly at this time, I guess, signing him now from the Dallas Cowboys. I really think that is an amazing signing. I think Jaguars fans should be very, very happy about that. Because think about that. I mean, Marvin Jones isn't bad, but he's getting up there in age. You did lose DJ Chark in free agency, in this thing here. But you got Cedric Wilson Jr., and Chris Godwin. I mean, you have to be ecstatic if you're a Jaguars fan. And, there's several nice wide receivers that the Jaguars could also kind of target in the NFL draft in the later rounds. I'm very, very high on, and I think there's a possibility they could maybe, target a few of those guys. But if you're a Jaguars fan, I think you have to be thrilled. We're actually going to end that on that note. We'll skip the rest of free agency. The Jaguars have $13 million in cap space after these signings that I have done. I do expect the Jaguars to make more of these signings, but some of these little signings, that aren't marquee names, I'm not really going to do them because I don't. It's kind of hard to predict that. So we signed players. We signed AJ Kane. We re-signed him. We also re-signed Andrew Norwell, getting both our interior offensive linemen, our guards. We signed Chris Godwin. That's phenomenal. We signed Derek Burnett. I think that's a pretty good signing. Anthony Barr, Rodney McLeod, and Cedric Wilson Jr. Now, I know some of those guys might not be huge names, but I think if you're a Jaguars fan, you should be pretty happy about that because, the Jaguars only had a couple wins this past season, having obviously you're going to have the first pick again in the draft. I think those signings and those re-signings really, really elevate the Jaguars. And I think they could, just by looking at this, I think they could have, probably maybe 6 wins, which is very impressive compared to, what they only had like 2 or 3 wins in this, I guess, Urban Meyer project half season, basically. So, that was the, free agency, mock situation and, mock simulator. So now we're going to do the, NFL mock draft. This mock draft is from Pro Football Network, this mock draft simulator. This is going to be a 3-round mock draft. I'm not going to do trades because, honestly, I think it's a realistic possibility that Jaguars maybe do trade their first overall pick, but it's very hard to predict trades. I'm not doing that. It's way too hard to do. But looking at this draft here, number 1 overall pick, the Jaguars have so much pressure, and that's part of the reason why I think the Jaguars might end up trading their pick. You have, Kayvon Thibodeau, the edge from Oregon. You have Aiden Hutchinson, the edge from Michigan. Evan Neal, the offensive tackle from Alabama. And then you also have, Akeem Iwanu, the offensive tackle from NC State. Those are 4 guys who are consideration for the number 1 overall pick. It's interesting because what I mentioned, we signed Derek Burnett, but we also had $13 million in cap space. I wouldn't be surprised if the Jaguars spent more of that money, that extra money, for more guys in the defensive line. Aiden Hutchinson is phenomenal. Kayvon Thibodeau is phenomenal, but I've seen he might drop a tad bit. Evan Neal, I'm probably going to select him because we did not re-sign Cam Robinson. So we want to take Evan Neal. So we re-signed Andrew Norwell, we re-signed AJ Kane, and we're going to draft Evan Neal with the first overall pick, which I think that's pretty good. Because even though Trevor Lawrence might not have a ton of weapons compared to other people, you need to have a good offensive line before you have weapons. I think that's very important. And, watching the Bengals, it sucks because they have weapons, but they don't have an offensive line. And that's the thing that's holding them back. So some of these guys here, since we did not take an edge first overall, I fully anticipate the Jaguars taking an edge in the second round and vice versa. Let's say the Jaguars take an edge with the first overall pick. I think they're taking an offensive lineman with a second round pick. But if they take a offense tackle first overall, I think they take an edge in the second round. Look at some of these guys here. Drake Jackson, the edge from USC, really stands out to me. I think he would be a great addition. Some of these linebackers, Christian Harris, that's a pretty good guy from Alabama, the linebacker. Then you're looking at some of these corners and safeties. We kind of try to get some guys in the secondary. Treylon Burks, the wide receiver from Arkansas, I'm kind of surprised he's available. Zion Johnson, the guard from Boston College, that would be a very good pick if we did not re-sign AJ Kane or Andrew Norwell. But we did, so that would make no sense to draft him. I'm going to take Drake Jackson, the edge from USC. I think it's a very good pick, one of the best probably possible picks if you're the Jaguars. That's a very nice selection here. We have some trade offers here. Like I said, I would not be doing trades. I just think they're too unrealistic. So, like I said, this is a 3-round mock draft simulation from ProFootballNetwork.com. And we have 2 third-round picks here. And there's 2 players I'm really keeping an eye on for. Let's see here. Whichever player is first, I will probably draft him. I'm looking at these wide receivers. You have George Pickens, the wide receiver from Georgia. John Mechie, I don't know why he's so low. Justin Ross from Clemson. And I need to remind you, the familiarity with Trevor Lawrence, I think, is major when it comes to possibly drafting Justin Ross, from Clemson, and Wan'Dale Robinson, the speedster from Kentucky. I'm very intrigued by all those guys. And we only pick in 5 picks, so, there's no chance all those guys are going to be all gone. Somebody else I'm very interested in. I know he's, down the list at 114. I don't really understand that. That's Ohio State defense tackle Haskell Garrett. I like him a lot, and I think it'll be a great addition for this Jaguars defensive line. But I think that's a reach for Garrett, 65, considering all those wide receivers. John Mechie really intrigues me. But if I'm going to be realistic, I'm going to take Justin Ross because I don't think John Mechie is going to make it to the third round. I just do not get that. Justin Ross' familiarity with Trevor Lawrence plays a major factor in this pick, and I think the Jaguars get another wide receiver in this offseason. We're looking at the Jaguars getting Cedric Wilson Jr., Chris Godwin, and Justin Ross. If you're a Jaguars fan and if you're Trevor Lawrence, you have to be so ecstatic about those additions to the wide receiver core. And I know I said this is a little bit of a reach, but I'm probably going to take Haskell Garrett here because, in my opinion, I think he's much better than the 114th player overall. So let's see here. Haskell Garrett, defensive tackle for Ohio State. I don't get how he's 114. I would say around the 70 to 90 range is where he will end up being drafted. So if you're a Jaguars fan, I feel like you have to be very happy with this mock draft. We took Evan Neal first overall, the offense tackle from Alabama. In the second round, we took Drake Jackson, the edge from USC. And like I said, whatever position they don't take in round 1, I think they take in round 2. In round 3, they had 2 third-round picks. They took wide receiver from Clemson, Justin Ross. I love that pick so much. And Haskell Garrett, the defense tackle from Ohio State. So when you're looking at the additions from this Jacksonville Jaguars team, we have Evan Neal, Drake Jackson, Justin Ross, Haskell Garrett. That's just in the draft. I think that's very, very good. And then you go the guys we've signed. We re-signed AJ Kane. We re-signed Andrew Norwell. We signed Chris Godwin. We signed Derek Barnett. We signed Anthony Barr, Rodney McLeod, and Cedric Wilson Jr. I think you have to be so excited if you are a Jaguars fan because – some of those guys, because those are major contributors who can really help this Jaguars team for the next several seasons. And when you look at this Jaguars team, like I said, they play in the AFC South, probably the worst division in the NFL. All those, kind of signings and additions, we're going to look to see how many wins the Jaguars will get this season if they make those moves in the offseason. So, at Washington, at Houston, at the Colts, Houston at home, Colts at home, Titans at home, Broncos at home, Raiders at home, Cowboys and Giants at home, at the Chiefs, at the Chargers, at the Eagles, at the Titans, at the Lions, at the Ravens, and at the Jets. So what I like to do, I like to take these in fours and, groups of 4. Obviously, basically not now since it's a 17-game season, but Washington, the Texans, Colts, and Texans. When I look at a group of 4 of those 4 teams, I feel like the Jaguars can win 2, maybe 3. I feel like they probably beat Houston at least once, and I think they can beat Washington. So I want to say more realistic. Let's say 2 and 4 out of those 4 games. Then our next 4 here, we have the Colts, Titans, Broncos, and Raiders. I think they beat one of those teams, whether it's the Broncos or the Raiders. So that's 3 wins. Cowboys, Giants, Chiefs, and Chargers. I think they beat the Giants. That's 4 wins. And then we have the Eagles, Titans, Lions, Ravens, and Jets. So at the moment, we have 3 wins. So Eagles, I think they win. That's 4. Lions, I think they win is 5. Jets is 6. But when you're looking at it, I think you can see a possible upset. This Jaguars team maybe beating the Titans, maybe beating the Colts. I would not be shocked at all. So when I look at this Jaguars team after this free agency mock simulation and a 3-round mock draft from ProFootballNetwork.com, I could definitely see the Jaguars in a situation where they have 6 or 7 wins, which is very, very good coming from a team who just had a number 1 pick the last 2 years. And looking at this team, I think you should be very happy if you're a Jaguars fan because some of these signings like Chris Godwin, Cedric Wilson Jr., and some of these draft picks are going to be major contributors for the Jaguars for the next several seasons. I hope you all liked this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video and subscribe to the channel, I would very, very much appreciate it. And I will see you all next time on the Sports Dude Hunt Show.